Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about the word called bankrupt. That's right. Not only are we talking about FTX, which we're going to get into in our final segment. I mean, there's just a lot in this story. We're probably going to be unpacking the layers of the onion for several months or years. We're going to talk all about it in our final segment. Let's just get a quick preview on what we've got. House in Congress, apparently there's a committee called the Finance Committee. They said that they're going to investigate SBF. We'll see. We've got the entire bankruptcy filing called the first day filing that is submitted now, and it's a doozy. The guy who is behind this filing, he said that it is unprecedented. Woo! Unprecedented, and it's a doozy. So we'll go through that one. There's rumors of a big no-no tape between these two. So we'll talk about that. These two, apparently. Really bizarre. We'll talk about that one. And we've got a preview of that over from our friend, The Quartering. Hunter Biden was on a Twitter Spaces, and he got asked about FTX, and somebody recorded that and posted that over on Reddit. And we've got a very, very sort of, man, this is like a vulnerable clip from Mr. Wonderful. We talked about yesterday, he got named as a defendant in a class action lawsuit, and he gave this interview, man, and he is heading into it just like directly. And I got to give him major props. He says, listen, I stand by my record, and it's a really kind of a powerful 3 minutes. So we'll listen to him because, man, a lot of people are getting absolutely blown out on the FTX saga. And so we'll talk about that in our final segment. In our second segment, though, we've got a little bit of, policy heavy lifting to get into today because marriage is now going to be codified, sort of, probably. Depends on what Joe Biden does, whether he signs this thing into law. But look at this. We've got a new bill called the Respect for Marriage Act, which just got signed into law in the Senate, or signed by the Senate. Going to be going over to the White House to sign it right into law. And it's all about marriage. It's called the Respect for Marriage Act. And so we'll talk about that. Kind of an interesting development. We're going to hear from two senators, of course, Amy Klobuchar, who says that she's been supporting LGBTQ expialidocious rights since the beginning. And we also have Senator Lankford, who is saying, this was a whole kind of a joke. We didn't have any opportunity for debate. We didn't get to talk really about the issues. But about 12 Republicans signed off on this thing. People like Murkowski, Romney, Young, Ernst, Collins, and others. And so we'll take a look at what happened in Congress. But in our first segment, we are going to take a look at what the new GOP is doing, because, boy, they are very interested in going after the Biden crime family. And so we've got several clips from Comer, clips from Jordan. We're going to check in and see what they're doing on over there in the Senate. We'll also check in and see what Mike Pence has to say, because he's sort of at the end of the line. He said, you know what, when it comes to the January 6th Select Committee, I'm not showing up. They are intending to force me to come in here and testify, and I'm not going to do it. And so we have a lot to get to, as you can see, my friends. And if you can hear in the background, we've got Leaf Blower Guy right outside the window who just decided to show up right as the show started, which is just perfect. We love Leaf Blower Guy on the show. We run into him all the time on our morning walk and talks. And sometimes he just comes around right as the show starts and just likes to park right outside the window. It's very good for the audio reverberations as we're trying to focus on the program. So shout out to Leaf Blower Guy. Love him. Yes. All right. Come on. There's some more. Get him. All right, he's going to get them. So, all right, so Leaf Blower Guy's in the background. If you're wondering what that hum is, that's what that is. But my friends, if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community over there. And shout outs to Bonnie. We've got Rye T. We've got John Allen's in the house. Palmino. He says, hello, everybody, with a little pinky wave. And yeah, we got a whole community chatting over there, having a good time. And so if you want to support the show, come check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and, join the community. That's how you support the show. Support your fellow watchers out there. All right, but let's get right into the meat and potatoes on the day, because we've got a lot to get to. And here he comes again. Leaf blower guy. All right, so we're just going to barrel on through it. The Republicans waste no time to launch their investigation into the Biden crime family. We just got notice that the House of Representatives is going to change hands. The Republicans will be in charge come January, and they're not wasting a minute. We've got several clips here. You can see Jim Jordan and Representatives James Comer, who are going to be telling us what their plan is, what their intentions are. And it's not just this Hunter Biden investigation. Like, they're not just focused on somebody who's got a drug addiction problem, right? Many people have problems and addictions. It's about exploiting the relationship with his father, who was the vice president at the time, exploiting America and getting held to account for that. So we've got several clips. We're going to go through it in depth. Jim Jordan spoke for quite some time. Then we'll turn our attention over to the Senate. We'll see what's going on over there. We've got Ron Johnson, who was asking some pretty pointed questions of FBI Director Christopher Wray about Hunter Biden, right? They're saying, hey, Christopher Wray, when you're not on vacation flying all over the place on company planes, are you doing anything meaningful to investigate what could be a gigantic conflict of interest? Hawley's there, and we'll check in with Mike Pence at the end. But first, let's get an overview from Rep. Comer, who is going to lay it out. The House GOP was out in full. You can see them lined up. They brought even visual aids to make sure that we could all see the amount of corruption that exists in the Biden crime family. But here is just a clip of Representative James Comer on the Oversight Committee telling America what his intentions are as soon as the Republicans are back in charge.
The investigation reveals a family that engaged with some of America's most powerful adversaries, planning to sell one of the largest sources of cobalt for electric vehicles in the world to the Chinese, for example.
Yeah, we covered that.
The Bidens flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Among the dozens of shell companies the Bidens set up, there were millions of dollars of wire transfers, flights on Air Force Two to conduct personal business, and meetings with heads of state, all while Joe Biden was aware of what was happening.
Remember, Joe Biden was vice president. They were flying over to China. Hunter Biden was like, can I come and can I bring a couple check-in bags too also while we're here? And they did. And he flew over there and he was hanging out. Joe Biden was on official business. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden was running around with Chinese, an entourage, and they were facilitating this deal where they were going to go into I believe it was in Africa, where there was a problem where the Chinese could not take over the entirety of the mine, right? They couldn't it wasn't allowed for whatever reason for them to have 100% ownership interest, right? The domestic country said, we're not going to give you 100%. So they said, no problem. We'll work with Hunter Biden's company. They'll take 40%. The Chinese will take 40%. That's great. That means we'll have our original 20%. They'll work that deal out. The nation state says that's acceptable to us. Once it was facilitated, the Chinese had 40%. 2 years go by. Hunter Biden's entity then sells their 40% to the Chinese. Boom, the Chinese have 80% now, which is exactly what they wanted. And the original nation state is like, what the heck? That wasn't our intention. So he's detailing what all of that looks like.
All the while, he turned a blind eye. Many transactions related to these businesses have raised red flags at U.S. banks. A suspicious activity report, or SAR, is a document a bank must file with the Treasury Department when a transaction is suspected to be related to money laundering or fraud or other types of criminal activity. According to media reports, the Biden family accumulated over 150 SARs.
Wow.
One SAR.
That might raise an eyebrow or two. If that were Donald Trump Jr., if that were Eric Trump, if that were Ivanka Trump, what do you think? What do you think Letitia James would do? Or how do you think Adam Kinzinger would react to that?
Generated by an American bank to the Treasury Department connects Hunter Biden and his business associates to international human trafficking, among other illegal activities. The money that was being made from foreign principals in the same room as Joe Biden was increasingly spent on furthering
all sorts of bad activity. And so this was a very, very big, long press briefing. I just have a couple clips that we'll talk through because, you can watch the full thing online, but, it's this idea that it's deeper than just Hunter Biden being a crackhead, Hunter Biden using prostitutes. All right, okay, I can understand that, why that's problematic, and why, if you're a Republican, you would never get away with that, and that would be the end of every Republican's campaign. I understand it. But what's more important, I think, what's more consequential, and what I think you can really, rally a bunch of independents around in particular, is around the idea that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party was covering this stuff up, that there's this culture of corruption where the kids are just palling around with mom or dad and they're just getting all sorts of insane deals, oil deals, mineral rights deals. What does Hunter Biden know about any of that stuff? Obviously nothing, other than the fact that he was selling access to daddy. So here's another clip from James Comer. Comer is communicating this investigation is about depth and that Joe Biden knew all about Hunter's schemes.
This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes.
Repeatedly.
National security interests require the committee conduct investigation, and we will pursue all avenues that have long been ignored. Committee Republicans have uncovered evidence of federal crimes committed by and to the benefit of members of the president's family. These include conspiracy or defrauding the United States.
That's a big one.
Wire fraud. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Yeah, but is there sedition in there? Is there insurrection? Otherwise, nobody really cares. I mean, come on.
Violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act.
Yeah, but it's not a podium.
Evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering.
But there's no podium crimes in there. There's no water bottles at a police officer that happened.
The Biden family's business dealings implicate a wide range of criminality, from human trafficking to potential violations of the Constitution. In the 118th Congress, this committee will evaluate the status of Joe Biden's relationship with his family's foreign partners and whether he is a president who is compromised or swayed by foreign dollars and influence.
Yeah, if Hunter is compromised, if the Russians or the Chinese or somebody has some, no stuff on Hunter and they say, your daddy's implicated, you're involved, your daddy's involved, your whole family's involved, doesn't that sort of drag Joe into it? Doesn't that make him compromised as well? That's what he's asking. And the investigation seems like it's going to be centered around that.
I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden.
Yes.
And that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress.
Good. Absolutely good. I think that's the right move. Going after Hunter for having an addiction is, all right. Like that's I understand this is politics and sometimes you go there, but the bigger issue is that this was a funnel for the big man himself, as they like to call it, which of course they did. And so we've got another clip. We're going to check in with Jim Jordan. We're going to see what the Senate has to say. We're going to also see what Mike Pence has to say, because he's saying, I'm not cooperating with the January 6th Select Committee. But before we get there, we've got to talk about gold. My friends, if you have an IRA, a 401k, or a savings account, you know that things are pretty scary out there. We've got the Biden administration. They've printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt is at a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've ever seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time until the house of cards comes crashing down. If you've got a retirement account, your money could be at risk. And so I'd invite you to talk to my friends at Goldco to see how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's robertlikesgold.com. And I do like gold. Goldco is a great company. They're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. Check them out at robertlikesgold.com and support the sponsors of the show, my friends. All right. And so that is that. Now, we've got Jim Jordan, who is backing up Representative James Comer. And Jim Jordan is saying, the media here is saying that what we're doing is sort of furthering misinformation, or that we were proffering some bad data to the American people. But what you people did when it comes to this Hunter Biden saga was truly misinformation. You did it in the days right before a very important election. You had 50 knuckleheads from these so-called intelligence agencies who decided that they had actual intelligence. Turns out they didn't. Jim Jordan is blasting them today at the House GOP conference on Hunter Biden.
Jamie, so I would just start with this question. What part of Mr. Comer's presentation was Russian disinformation?
None.
I mean, never forget what happened on October 19th, 2020, 15 days before the most important election we have in our country. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? 15 days before that, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Clapper, and 49 other people signed a letter that said the following.
Agents.
It is for these reasons that we write to say that the arrival on the U.S. political scene of emails purportedly belonging to Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
Liars.
They further went on to say, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails provided to the New York Post are genuine or not, just that our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. And of course, that letter became the pretext for suppressing this story.
Yeah, Twitter banned it. Everybody banned it. Now, it goes deeper than this. We'll see if Jordan gets there. But remember that Zuckerberg went on to the Joe Rogan show and he sat there and he said, well, yeah, I mean, it's not just the letter, right? It wasn't just these goobers who were just jotting down literal propaganda so that their candidate would win. It's also FBI agents. It's people coming from the government to collude with the big tech censors and to get them to do what they want, to do their bidding. Eric Schmidt from Missouri is suing them. We know that several Biden administration officials have been ordered to sit for depositions, including Mr. Elvis Chan, an FBI special agent who finally got the order to be deposed, even though the government is demanding that they don't do this. So you talk about a massive amount of censorship, and the people in the intelligence communities themselves had no intelligence at all.
Again, just days before the most important election we have in our country. So I would ask this, was J.P. Morgan's suspicious activity report to the Treasury Department, was that just a classic earmark of a Russian information operation? How about when Hunter Biden sent the email that Mr. Comer pointed to, sent the email asking for keys to his new office space, one for himself, one for President Biden, one for his uncle Jim Biden, and one for the emissary for the chairman of the Chinese energy company, CFCC.
We talked about all this before the election even took place.
Was that just Russian disinformation operation in place?
All evidence.
What part of Mr. Comer's presentation prompted the FBI to go to Facebook and say, hey, you want to be on the lookout for Russian misinformation here this election season?
And they did. Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, all of the big tech bros who are lavishing it up in Silicon Valley, palling around with the Democrats at their cocktail parties. They all said, oh, perfect. Oh, FBI, we don't want to spread misinformation. Oh, no, it's dangerous. You know, this is a COVID situation and science and all this garbage. And they jumped like a springboarded out of the Jack in the Box. Boom. Yes, we love to suspend everybody. Suspend the story, ban anybody who talks about this stuff, demonetize people. We got demonetized after J6. The whole situation was a mess. And Jim Jordan is saying that's misinformation. Most of that stuff has turned out to be true.
What part of his presentation would prompt that? And I think it's also important to understand, never forget how the story has changed. Think about this. When it started off, it was, no, it's not his laptop. It's not his laptop. Then it was, well, it's his laptop, but remember, it's Russian disinformation and no one did anything wrong. Then it was, well, maybe he did something wrong, but President Biden didn't know about it. And now it's, well, maybe President Biden knew about it and was involved, but it didn't influence his decisions. In fact, yesterday, there was a story in Politico which said that. The story in Politico yesterday, investigating the investigators, dim strategists to launch counterpunch to House GOP. Story in Politico yesterday.
Investigating the investigators. Who do they think they are? What are they trying to rip off, watching the watchers? Get out of here.
Here's what I said in there. Quote, no evidence has publicly emerged that Joe Biden's decisions were affected by his son's business dealings.
No evidence emerged. Do you see that goalpost change? First of all, it was that Joe Biden didn't know about it. No, he had no idea. Now it's like, well, he probably did know about it, but it didn't impact him. Oh, yeah, you love how that changes.
Wow, we've went from it wasn't his laptop and it was Russian disinformation to, oh, whatever was in there didn't affect the president's business dealings, even though he was involved, even though the laptop was real, even though it wasn't disinformation. That's how far we've come. So I think I think there are all kinds of questions that need to be answered, and we're determined to get there. Here's some of them that I have. Did the FBI brief Twitter as well? We know they briefed Facebook. We know that had an impact on the election. There's been surveys done where thousands and thousands of voters across this country said it might have impacted their decision in the election in 2020. Did the FBI brief any of the 51 former intelligence officials who signed that letter? Again, that letter that became the pretext for suppressing this story. Who did the briefings? Who briefed Facebook? Here's a name that I think is interesting.
Who is it?
Timothy T-Bolt.
Oh!
So Mr. T-Bolt, now remember, we just did a report 2 weeks ago, Judiciary Committee,
1,000
a report
pages.
that talked about the political influence and the political shenanigans going on in our Justice Department.
Now, recap on this one. We talked all about this. There was a 1,000-page document that the Senate, right, had put together that we covered. And I think that was from Grassley and I think Jim Jordan and all of them, right? They've all been sending letters to Christopher Wray, to the DOJ, demanding answers, demanding action, like for years now, right? 1,000 pages of letters. We went through it all. And they are not responding to any of it. Christopher Wray sat there in front of Chuck Grassley and said, "Are we done here?" They said, "No, we go all day." He said, "Yeah, but I've got to get out of here. I got a flight to catch. It's 12 o'clock. I didn't know we were going to be here all day." And they just sat there in the Senate and they just said, I guess you can leave and see ya. And he left. And he's just like, "Yeah, I'm out of here. What, you guys are wasting my time."
Based on 14 FBI agents who come talk to our office as whistleblowers. One of those agents said, and this is the term he used, he said, at the highest levels of the FBI, specifically the Washington field office, he said it's rotted to the core. Not talking about rank and file agents. They're doing good work. Talking about the top people at the Washington field office. We had another whistleblower who brought up the name Mr. T-Bolt and said Mr. T-Bolt is pressuring agents to catalog and categorize cases in a specific way to satisfy this narrative about domestic violence extremism.
There it is.
But what's interesting is a different whistleblower, one who didn't come to our office, a different whistleblower who went to Senator Grassley's office, said that Mr. T-Bolt, by the way, the head of the special agent in charge at the Washington field office, Mr. T-Bolt is also the guy who suppressed information about the Hunter Biden story in October of 2020. I'd like to talk to Mr. T-Bolt. In fact,
we'd all like to talk to him, but he's not at the FBI anymore. He resigned or was fired or something. He's not there. A lot of people wanted to have him answer questions, in particular when the Republicans took over power in January. But of course, as soon as that looked like it was going to happen, all the rats abandoned ship. Timothy Tebow is like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go retire into the private sector now that the Democrats aren't in charge. And now that my collusion in order with all sorts of bad actors to gain political favor in this country, it's all been found out. I better retire now.
To talk to Mr. Tebow, even though he said publicly, I welcome a chance to answer questions, he's refused to come in and talk to us. That's someone we need to talk to. Why has the Biden administration suddenly changed their position on suspicious activity reports? Used to be, Mr. Comer wanted to see him. Any member of Congress, any chairman wanted to see him, any ranking member wanted to see him, any member of Congress, any committee, you got a chance to see him. Suddenly, no, we can't see him. I think Mr. Comer and our team at the Oversight Committee would kind of like to see the other 148.
Yeah, no
They've
kidding.
seen two. They'd like to see the other 148. We're committed to getting to the truth, the facts. We think that's what the American people are entitled to. We're gonna try to help Representative Comer and the team here at Oversight with our work on judiciary, but with a specific focus on what the FBI was doing. We know these 51 former intel officials, they got security clearance. How often are they talking to the FBI? Are they talking to the FBI? Who's doing the talking? Who's doing the briefing? Were they briefed? There's so many questions that need answers so we can get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, there were 1,000 pages of answers that they demanded from these agencies like the FBI, like the DOJ. Why are they going after everybody for domestic violent extremism? Why is Tim Tebow demanding that, people recategorize and reclassify certain investigations to serve their political ends? Well, because they've got a narrative to push, they've got a budget to fill, and they've got a war to wage against everyday Americans. They want to label every single person who questions the standard narrative as an insurrectionist or as an extremist or as a homegrown violent whatever. And now the Republicans are asking some questions, which of course is very welcomed news. FBI Director Christopher Wray asked some serious questions by Ron Johnson, a senator who wants to know more about Hunter Biden. Of course, Christopher Wray uses the same talking points he always says every time he comes in here and doesn't answer anything, which is, well, it's an ongoing investigation and we can't talk about any of that.
I take compliance with all of our other rules very seriously.
Senator Grassley wrote you a letter on July 25th of 2020.
Many letters.
In which he said that whistleblowers to his office reported that FBI officials initiated a scheme to downplay derogatory information on Hunter Biden for the purpose of shutting down investigatory activity related to his potential criminal exposure by labeling it, quote, disinformation. Boy, That's a familiar term.
Disinformation. If you label it disinformation, you don't need to investigate it. It's like a get out of jail free card. So just, you, sir, I think you've been involved in some very illegal activity. Sorry, that's misinformation. It's like the fake news label. No, that's just fake news. Oh, it's just disinformation. We don't have to investigate it. Perfect. It happens to involve the president's son.
That scheme was hatched in August of 2020. Also included, he said in August 2020, FBI supervisory intelligence analyst Brian Auten opened an assessment which was used by FBI headquarters team to improperly discredit negative Hunter Biden information as disinformation and cause investigative activity to cease. Have you responded to Senator Grassley's letter that he wrote over 3 months ago?
No, he hasn't.
Senator, I know there have been a whole slew of letters. I believe we've responded to a number of them, but sitting here right now, I can't tell you which ones
you have not.
You have not. Yeah.
Have you looked into...
What a liar. Can you believe this guy? This is the FBI director, right? And on this channel previously, many of you have been here as we have painstakingly gone through the big phone book of letters that our dear friend Chuck Grassley has drafted up over the many, many months. 1,000 pages is what it totaled the last time we looked at all of it assembled together. So liar Christopher Wray has asked a very pointed question. Sir, you've seen all of those letters. Have you responded? Yes, I have. And Ron Johnson says, no, you haven't.
Brian Auten opened an assessment which was used by FBI headquarters team to improperly discredit negative Hunter Biden information as disinformation and cause investigative activity to cease. Have you responded to Senator Grassley's letter that he wrote over 3 months ago?
Yes or no?
Senator, I know there have been a whole slew of letters. I believe we've responded to a number of them, but sitting here right now, I can't tell you which ones
you
we've
have not.
responded to.
You have not.
Have you looked into
Liar.
those charges that there was a scheme hatched in August 2020 to downplay the derogatory information on Hunter Biden? Have you looked into that personally?
We have, as we speak, a number of personnel matters that are underway, and for as reasons I'm sure you can appreciate, we can't discuss.
I know that's always your
personnel
excuse.
matters.
No, I got it. I understand how you remain above the law by using that excuse repeatedly.
Yeah, we can't go into it. Personnel matters, personnel investigations. I can't talk about any of this stuff because I don't care about you at all. I don't really care really what you say. You have no power over me. I'm the FBI. I run stuff here. Okay, that's just what it is. You stupid Republicans, you can just sit there and ask me questions all day. I don't care. Also, I've got a plane to catch. It's vacation time. So very clearly lying. Well, I think we've responded to some of those things. No, you haven't. Lying to a senator, like your school, like your homework, you know, it's just, maybe you can sneak this one through. No, I don't think so. Senator Josh Hawley has some questions for FBI Director Wray. In particular, why is your agency so disgusting and corrupt? Why do you keep raiding the homes of innocent people who would voluntarily self-surrender? Why are you weaponizing the DOJ against your political enemies? Can you help us figure that one out, Chris?
Whistleblowers who have come forward to members of this body, to members of the House. The FBI has been sending more than, in one instance, a dozen armed agents to a rural Pennsylvania home of a Catholic pro-life demonstrator to arrest him at gunpoint in front of his children in early morning hours, despite the fact that he posed no risk of violence or threat and had previously offered to turn himself in. Numerous whistleblowers, field agents, have alleged that D.C., your headquarters, has pulled them off working on child sex abuse cases, working on human trafficking cases, in order to work on January 6th matters for this reason.
Thrown water bottles and potentially stolen podiums.
To give the appearance, they say that there are hundreds of new domestic terrorism cases in the country, when in fact there are not.
Yeah, and remember this point. Remember what the DOJ and the FBI has done on this point because they are so disgusting? They wanted to classify every single J6 crime, every insurrectionist, as an insurrectionary crime that originated in their home state. Okay? Let's say hypothetically that somebody named Rob Govea had traveled from Arizona to the events on January 6th, and I was there, theoretically, I was actually here streaming with you. But if I were there, right, and I partook in that event, then they would say that I was a domestic violent extremist, but that the crime, because I came from Arizona, I'm an Arizona domestic violent extremist. Okay. And so what does that mean? That you've got all of these now, what sort of this concentrated cluster of activity, right? One incident on one day that lasted a few hours that resulted in very minimal damage that actually only interfered with the actual presentation of the electoral votes by about 4 or 5 hours. Everybody was back inside the same day. It was a very minor protest relative to other ongoing riots that this country has seen. But all of that, right, it wasn't about just one cluster of crimes in one incident. It was, no, these are thousands of domestic terrorists who are just anchored in all of the various states all across this country. And we've got to go root them out because they're in Arizona and they're in Texas and they're in Wyoming and they're all over the country. So the FBI then says, well, my gosh, we got to go investigate those things. We need more money to go travel here, better open up some field offices. All of this is being recategorized, not as a single protest incident that took place on one day on January 6th. Instead, it's this massive conspiracy of insurrectionists all over the country who might just bandy together and, bubble up and take over everything. Ridiculous.
Whistleblowers, field agents have also said that D.C. has ordered the use of SWAT teams on nonviolent suspects who may have attended a January 6th rally, and they have been ordered to conduct surveillance and knock on doors of people who were not even in D.C. on January 6th. And again, all of this, according to the whistleblowers, these are your agents, all of this in order to make it look as if there's a mass surge in domestic terrorism all across the country, when in fact, the stats are being padded by political directive in your office. They also say, these whistleblowers, the D.C. leadership deliberately suppressed investigations into Hunter Biden, contrary to FBI procedure, and have also retaliated against FBI agents and whistleblowers who have contacted Congress, which, by the way, they are protected by statute to do so. This is what's happening at your FBI while you are evading oversight hearings. Mr. Director, do you think you're still up to this job?
I absolutely think I'm still up to this job, and I
don't.
think our workforce feels the same way.
Well, I don't. And frankly, I think you should have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah, amen to
And
that.
given your behavior recently, I think it only makes it more clear. Are there any travel plans today that we should be aware of?
Going
that
on
you have?
vacation?
We're supposed to have a second round. Will you be here for that?
Yes.
Oh! You gonna go on your little vacation trip? You gonna go hang out by the beach there, Christopher Wray? Or you gonna actually sit here and answer questions like you're supposed to because you work for the government and you're supposed to be somebody who's responsive to oversight requests, and you're not supposed to just take every one of Chuck Grassley's letter and throw them in the shredder, you jerk. All right, so Josh Hawley beats him up pretty nicely. And look at this little smirk on Christopher Wray's face. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna be here, Josh. All right. So that's some good stuff there. Josh Hawley giving it to Christopher Wray. Of course, that's always enjoyable. Now, elsewhere, not in Congress, we have, we've got a battle between the separation of powers. We've got congressional Democrats at this moment in time who are running an illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee. As we've talked about, it's not representative at all. The J6 committee was supposed to be comprised of 5 Republicans, doesn't have any of them on there. The Democratic leader, Speaker Pelosi, appointed every single person on the J6 committee. The Republicans have 0 representation at all. Now, for a long time, a lot of people have been saying that Donald Trump, he should do his duty and he should go up there and everybody should just show up in front of the J6 committee. And we've been saying here on this channel, that's ridiculous. If that is the case, if the president just has to show up every time some loser like Liz Cheney sends a subpoena, well, then that means that the Congress has really more power than the executive branch. That would be insane. That would be a big problem for this country. Now, people like Mike Pence and others have been really quiet about this argument for some period of time until their butt comes into the fire. This is Mike Pence saying, you know what, on second thought, I don't think that I have any obligation at all to testify in front of the J6 committee because of the separation of powers.
Do you intend to ever sit and answer questions written in person for the January 6th committee? Do you believe, though, that the public deserves that? Is this interview it? Is this book it? Or will you answer questions about that day before Congress?
Well, I shared my heart and I shared my story in this book, and we'll continue to speak openly about it. I expect to some degree for the rest of my life. But from the time that January 6th was formed, and every member was appointed by the Democrat Speaker of the House, I was concerned.
But your chief of staff spoke to them, Mark Shore, your legal counsel, Greg Jacobs, testified.
I'll get to that. But
you don't want to engage with them at all?
No, I served for 12 years in the Congress. It's inconceivable to me that one party would appoint every member of a committee in Congress. That's antithetical to the whole idea of the
Insane.
committee system. That being said, I never stood in the way of senior members of my team cooperating with the committee and testifying. But Congress has no right to my testimony.
Exactly right.
We have a separation of powers under the Constitution of the United States. And I believe it would establish a terrible precedent
Yes.
for the Congress to summon a vice president of the United States to speak about deliberations that took place at the White House.
So you're closing the door on that entirely?
I'm closing the door on that. But I must say again, the partisan nature of the January 6th committee has been a disappointment to me. It seemed to me in the beginning there was an opportunity to examine every aspect of what happened on January 6th and to do so more in the spirit of the 9/11 Commission, nonpartisan, non-political, and that was an opportunity lost.
Yeah, a lot of these arguments are now coming out, about how ridiculous this whole committee is. Very, very interesting. Where was Mike Pence when the committee was formed, screaming about the illegitimacy of it? After, they've already presented their entire case, essentially, right? They've had how many hearings now? And where was Mike Pence saying that this committee was illegitimate? Where has this argument been from any of the Republicans? They have allowed this committee to go forward because it's been very useful for them. It's taking out their top opponent who they don't like. So they just allow it to go on. But when the question comes now to him, Mr. Pence, now you gonna let your butt get hauled in here in front of this garbage committee? Oh no. Oh no, that would be devastating to the separation of powers. Get out of here. All of it now is coming to light. Now he doesn't want to talk about it. So that is what the GOP is doing. They are launching a major investigation into Biden's. And so we'll continue to follow that, of course, as the judiciary committees in both houses continue their inquiries. We will cover it all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you are following along. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. So we've got a second segment here. And we're talking about marriage. This is a pretty big story that popped up today. A lot of activity out there on the Twitter sphere about this issue because marriage is about to be defined for us all by Congress. Let's take a look. 12 Republicans signed the Respect for Marriage Act. This undoes the Defense of Marriage Act and makes some other changes to the country's law that it is presumed will be signed by the White House. So the House is on board. The Senate is now on board. 12 Republicans joined the Democrats, and the law is going to end up on Joe Biden's desk. They've already indicated that they're looking to sign this thing. And so let's take a look at the Republicans who signed off and joined the Democrats. Many of them the usual suspects. We've got Blunt from Missouri, Burr, North Carolina, West Virginia, Capito, Collins from Maine, Ernst from Iowa, Wyoming, Loomis, Murkowski in Alaska. We've got Portman from Ohio, Romney from Utah, and Sullivan, Alaska, Tillis, North Carolina, Young from Indiana. So those are the Republicans, and they all signed off on the vote. We're going to listen to some of the debates from Klobuchar and Lankford. But first, let's take a look at the vote and how it landed before we take a look at the actual bill itself. This is what it sounded like in the United States Senate when the votes were tallied for the Respect for Marriage Act.
On this vote, the yeas are 62, the nays are 37. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
And it's going to be passed in the Senate. You can see 62 to 37. H.R. 8404, motion to invoke cloture on the Respect for Marriage Act, now passes into law. There was some debate or passes into, it's approved by the Senate, goes over to the White House to be passed into law. Amy Klobuchar was out speaking in favor of this. We'll listen to just a quick 30 seconds of her before we jump in to see what the law says. Amy Klobuchar arguing for the Respect for Marriage Act in the Senate today.
Mr. President, I rise in support of the Respect for Marriage Act, and I am proud to be a co-sponsor. I come from a state that has long been at the cutting edge of progress. Minnesota began protecting LGBTQ people against workplace discrimination in 1993.
That's a long time ago. There were a lot less letters back then.
At that time, it was the first and only state in the nation to outlaw discrimination based on gender identity. And 2 decades later, in 2013, we became the 12th state to legalize marriage equality. Across the country, as we know, many states have made advances. Today, 23 states have laws protecting people from discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. And in 2015, the Supreme Court recognized that the U.S. Constitution guarantees same-sex couples the right to marry. But as far as we have come, we still have miles to go until LGBTQ Americans can live their lives with freedom, authenticity, and equality.
And she's still missing some letters on there, so hopefully the bill, accounts for all of that. But that's Amy Klobuchar. Now, the bill actually, passed, as we saw, 62 votes for it, a bunch of Republicans joining in. One Republican does not support the Respect for Marriage Act. This is Lankford. Senator Lankford from Oklahoma says, this bill was really inappropriately passed. We haven't even had an opportunity to debate this. We haven't had the ability to add amendments to this. We haven't considered things like religious freedom and how this bill might implicate private businesses and other people who might be implicated by this vast redefinition of the law. And if you recall, we just had the Dobbs decision, which came out, and that sort of reversed Roe versus Wade, which was a terrible decision because of the fact that the court created law out of whole cloth. Now what they're saying is that the Supreme Court might be on the brink of reversing these other sort of protections. And so the Congress is legislating this in order to prevent that from happening. Lankford says, though, we haven't given this the proper time and day. We got to give it more attention before we just pass gigantic definitions for all America.
We've had this text now for about 36 hours. It literally just got dropped on us. So for about 36 hours, we've been going through, and it's not long. It's 3 pages, asking questions. How does it work? What happens with it? And several individuals have said, hey, this is a real problem for religious liberty. We should fix this. And others have said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make sure this is actually clear. Except now that the debate has started, amendments have been shut out. There are no amendments. All of these gaps that I talk about for individuals, for small businesses, for individuals of conscience, for the right to be able to protect yourself if you're facing religious discrimination on this, for the limiting portions of in this act, or from explaining not arising from a marriage, what that may mean, the issue of principal purpose and not having to prove your principal purpose in a court of law is a religious issue. Everyone seems to nod their head and say, oh yeah, those are problems. Multiple members have brought amendments and said, let's fix it. And yet they're being told over and over again, no amendments. We're not going to fix it. You know what that tells me? These are not mistakes in the drafting. This was purposeful. That's what that tells me. Listen, I believe the rights of every individual should be honored. But this is not choosing to be able to protect the rights of every individual. This is saying some people are more equal than others. That's a problem.
In other words, the law is leaving open holes that allows certain lawyers and certain political arguments to be exploited to take the law further than maybe it is intended, or at least than it's written. When laws are big, broad, and vague, sometimes you can recraft them to serve your political ends. Now let's take a look at the actual bill itself. We have that here. Now this is something that we don't take a look at too often on the show, which is sort of why I wanted to go through this. This is the formal congressional record that was entered in on November 15th, and it comes over from the Congressional Research Service. And you can see sort of, this is how it's kind of the ongoing ledger for all of the activity in Congress. And you can take a look at what they're doing today. I mean, here we had Chuck Schumer. What are our senators doing on a daily basis? Well, Chuck Schumer was there today, and he issued a resolution called the Supporting the Designation of September 3rd as the National Sepsis Day. Oh, that's good. So we have a new sepsis holiday or something, a sepsis day. All right. You can see here that sepsis is a traumatic thing. It impacts 1.7 million people. It kills 270,000 people every year. And so our Congress got us a great new sepsis day. Yeah, and the Senate passed that into law. Amazing, great news. Okay, so we have another bill, the Blue Star Welcome Week. Okay, well, we love our military families and yeah, definitely supporting them. 600,000 active duty people. Great. We've got a whole new week that our September 24th now is going to be Blue Star Welcome Week. All right. So we just get, a bunch of new weeks, or new days and stuff. Okay, that's great. All right, what else do we have now? Here we got. Okay, so here is Klobuchar. Now, this is the amendment and the resolution that is proposed. And so we can go up here and we can take a look at what this says for us. This is the Defense of Marriage Act. Several people are endorsing it, and it is in front of Congress. Now, here's where it says. It says Congress finds the following. Right? This is the pretext for why they are doing what they are doing. They're saying, this is what we have found, right? We talk about legislative purpose here. You've got, before you can pass laws, right? Congress is supposed to have a reason to pass the law. And so they give us their findings. They say, no union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, union, sacrifice, and family. They continue, they say, diverse beliefs about the role of gender in marriage are held by reasonable and sincere people based on decent and honorable religious or philosophical premises, right? We can all agree to disagree. Therefore, Congress affirms that such people and their diverse beliefs are due proper respect. Millions of people, including same-sex couples and interracial couples, have entered into marriages and have enjoyed the rights and privileges associated with the marriage. Couples joining the marriage deserve to have the dignity, stability, and ongoing protection that marriage affords families and their children. That's the findings. That's the pretext. And so, therefore, they're saying that full faith and credit needs to be given to all marriages. Here's the law. They're going to insert 1738B by amending the act as follows. In general, they say, no person acting under state law may deny. Okay, so one state cannot deny the full faith and credit to any public act, record, or proceeding in any other state pertaining to a marriage between two individuals, right? So no genders, no orientations, nothing in there, just two individuals on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, national origin to those individuals. A right or claim, so you can't deny anybody. So if one state marries a group of people or a couple, in this case, two people, two individuals, on the basis of sex, ethnicity, national origin, they can't, one state has to recognize that proceeding in another state. A right or claim arising from such a marriage on the basis of such marriage would not be recognized under the law of the state on the basis of those individuals. Enforcement by attorney generals, private rights of action, meaning that any person who is harmed by a violation may bring a civil action in the appropriate United States court against the person who violated the injunctive relief. Okay, so, right, this is saying, this is almost sort of what the Texas abortion law did. Allows people to go file lawsuits if somebody is infringing on that right. So that's the enforcement mechanism, right? So it sort of opens up some additional ability for lawsuit. May bring a civil action. And so I think that's what Lankford was talking about. Well, what happens if something goes on here and somebody's got like a religious objection to doing something like this, and then it opens them up to personal civil liability? Oh, there you go. Right? Marriage recognition, they say the United States Code is as follows. For the purpose of federal law, marital status, anywhere it's considered a factor, the individual shall be considered married if the marriage was valid in the state and it was between two individuals. The term state means any state plus DC and Puerto Rico. They say that in general, nothing in this act nor any amendment shall be construed to diminish or abrogate a religious liberty or conscience of somebody who is in the United States. Consistent with the First Amendment in the Constitution, all of these locations can still continue to practice. They shall not be required to provide services, right? So there is a little bit of a religious protection in here. You don't have to provide services for those marriages, but the state has to acknowledge it. shall not be required. Any refusal under the subsection to provide those services shall not create any civil claim or cause of action, right? So now you get to that point. Well, what about, we're getting married. You got to bake me a cake type of a debate. Statutory prohibitions. Nothing in this act or any amendment shall be construed to deny or alter any other benefit created by any other right of law. And there's a severability clause there. So that's it. That's the end of the whole bill. And there's not much really meat and potatoes to it, actually. It's pretty small indeed. And as we heard from Senator Lankford, the issue with that might be that there's a lot of questions about how this gets implemented and what it means. And so, of course, we'll continue to cover any litigation as it pops up regarding the Respect for Marriage Act. We'll see if this gets signed into law by the Biden administration. It certainly will, I believe. And then there may be some additional challenges. This is the type of stuff that may work its way back up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what the Supreme Court does with it. We'll continue to follow. Thank you for joining us as we do. All right, my friends, now we've got our final big segment, and this is the juicy one. We're talking about FTX and this massive bankruptcy filing that is very juicy. FTX filed some bankruptcy paperwork, and it is juicy. We are going to go through it. The individual who is representing the entity now is saying this is unprecedented. Hasn't seen anything quite like this. And he's done a lot of this stuff. He's done this type of work for Enron and other entities. And he's looking at this collapse and he's going, whoo, we've got a lot to unpack. So we're going to get into that full bankruptcy document. But first, we have to ask ourselves, are there going to be any repercussions for SBF? Sam Bankman-Fried, of course, the founder of FTX, the person responsible for tens of billions of dollars evaporating essentially overnight. We're asking, are there going to be inquiries? The Hill is reporting that the House Committee on Finances is investigating the FTX collapse. We'll see. Here's SBF, you can see in front of the House some time ago, testified previously in front of the committee called the House Financial Services Committee. Who's on that committee? Oh yeah, Maxine Waters, Patrick McHenry. They're the top lawmakers on the committee. The House Financial Services Committee is going to hold a hearing next month to investigate the collapse of FTX. Maxine Waters and Patrick McHenry said that they expect disgraced founder Sam Bankman-Fried to appear before Congress. The fall of FTX has posed tremendous harm to over 1 million users, they said, many of whom were everyday people invested their hard-earned earnings into FTX, and it just disappeared overnight. FTX declared bankruptcy. 1 million users could face losses, and it's been an absolute disaster. Now, there's been a big question about that because we know who Maxine Waters is, and Maxine Waters has been on the Finance Committee for some period of time. In fact, when Sam Bankman-Fried was in front of Maxine Waters the last time, she gave him a little old kissy poo as he was walking out. She did a little bit of, bye, Sam, I love you. Thank you for all those donos in the form of millions of dollars to the Democratic Party. Bye, sweetie. Love ya. Bye. There it is. Now, there's the kiss, but then she does a little get out of here, So it's kind of like, I love you, but get out of here, right? Watch the little flick away. Do you see that? Here it is. I love you, but not that much. Get the heck out of here. So the question, of course, is Maxine Waters, gonna really be bringing the ruckus onto Sam Bankman-Fried? I mean, she's obviously out there fighting for her constituents and fighting for all the millions of people who got dispossessed by this thief. But she's giving him the old kissy poo. And presumably, she got a lot of money from him, or at least the Democrats did. All right, so that's Maxine giving the old kissy poo. Now, we're going to take a look at some other stuff, including, well, let me talk about this right now. Maxine Waters was presumably going to be investigating him. But if you didn't see this, there was a wild catch on Twitter. Jeremy Lafredo, he said that our friend Sam Bankman-Fried, the $10 billion liquidation king, he is or was scheduled on November 30th to go and have an event at the New York Times. They were hosting an event from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. A premier sponsor was Accenture, hosted in New York City, a live event featuring, look who's there. Look who's there. It's the whole crew. We've got SBF from FTX. We've got President Vladimir Zelensky, who's going to be there November 30th, just a couple days away. And Mark Zuckerberg, along with Janet Yellen, the United States Department Treasury. All of these people, all meeting at the New York Times. Very curious. Very, very, very curious. Yeah. And yesterday on the show, we talked about the cleaning of the money circle that goes on. You've got the old SBF who takes the money, cleans it in crypto. It goes somewhere else. Part of it goes back to Ukraine. He said they've created a whole foundation to sort of clean the money and send it back over to them. They're meeting with Zuckerberg, who of course suppressed all sorts of information, banned Donald Trump. And then we've got Janet Yellen, who is the Treasury Secretary, and she's got all sorts of, other interesting things going on with her. So what is going on here? And then after FTX starts coming under the microscope, the New York Times posts a gigantic loser puff piece about what a great guy this is and how much he was giving back to the community with all of his money. So the story just gets weirder and weirder. We're going to take a look at the full bankruptcy filing because it is a doozy to read through. And we're also going to check in with a major competitor to FTX called Binance. And CZ is here. He's got 2 clips for us about the call that he had with SBF, Sam, and he details about his strategy as well. Now, he's going to be coming under investigation from United States officials because they're very angry that he took out their golden calf. But we'll check in with him in a quick minute. But first, we've got to talk about survival food because nobody wants to starve to death in the current environment. And so 4patriots.com is the place to go. You know, a food shortage could be coming. Experts have been talking about this as recently as July. We've got drought, inflation, collapsing crypto exchanges, new policies, the food supply is coming to a breaking point. That's why survival food is now more important than ever. And you can create your own stockpile by going to 4patriots.com. It's not ordinary food. This is 25-year-long survival food. It's hand-packed right here in family-owned facilities in the United States, creating 200 American jobs. These are delicious. Breakfast, lunches, and dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. All you've got to do is boil, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com, use promo code Robert at checkout. Get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including their famous 3-month survival food kit. Now, anything that is shipped to you has a guarantee for 1 year. Orders over 97 include free shipping. A portion of all proceeds from every sale at 4Patriots goes to support our veterans and their families. And so you can go to 4patriots.com, use promo code Robert to get 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Robert at 4patriots.com. All right. And so now it's time to actually get into the bankruptcy filing because there is some good stuff here. 30 pages filed out of the Delaware District Court for the Bankruptcy Court. You see, this is a declaration of John J. III in support of Chapter 11 petitions. These are pleadings submitted in the bankruptcy proceedings in re FTX Trading, FTX Trading et al. As the debtors. Now, if we scroll down, we can see sort of we've got exhibits here. We've got the final signature by the CEO. Okay, this is John J. III declaring all of this as true. And so the way that this works is basically this guy comes in, he does a full assessment of FTX's situation. And this is what he's declaring to the bankruptcy court. He's explaining to them, this is what I am seeing, and this is what I'm going to need to help sort of close this whole situation up. He says, I, John, declare under the penalty of perjury that I am the CEO of the debtors called FTX. I've accepted this position the early morning hours of November 11th, right? They brought this guy in. Hey, we got to go to bankruptcy. Can you help us? Yes, I can. Okay. Says, I'm administering the interest and affairs of the debtors from my offices here in the States. My first official act in these roles was to authorize the Chapter 11 filings of the debtors. And since my appointment, I've worked around the clock with teams at a number of different law firms like Alvarez, Sullivan, Nardello, and others. We have worked with a confidential cybersecurity firm, and we've secured the assets of the debtors wherever located, to identify reliable books and records, to assemble information necessary to provide to this court, and to respond to numerous inquiries from multiple regulators and government authorities, including the CFTC, the SEC, U.S. Congress, and others. Okay, so basically this guy's like walking into a war zone, and he's giving the court an update. Says, all right, here's what's up. I walked into the office. Everything was on fire. So here I grabbed this extinguisher and that extinguisher, and here's what I'm doing. He says, I have over 40 years of legal restructuring experience. I've been the chief restructuring officer and CEO in several of the largest corporate failures in history. I've supervised situations involving allegations of crimes and malfeasance like Enron. I've supervised situations involving novel financial structures like Enron and residential capital. Also cross-border asset recovery like Nortels and overseas ship holdings. And nearly every situation in which I have been has involved and been characterized by defects of something, right? Whether there were internal controls, they didn't comply with regulations, there were human resource problems, or just their systems were broken. Very qualified. Been doing this for a long time. Enron, residential capital, Nortel, shipping companies. John says, never in my career over 40 years have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. From compromised systems integrity, faulty regulatory oversight abroad, to the concentration of control in the hands of a very small group of inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised individuals, this situation is unprecedented. These Chapter 11 cases have 5 core objectives. 1, implementation of controls. He's saying, we got to get control of this situation. I've got the implementation of accounting, audit, cash management, cybersecurity, HR, risk management, data. All of these things, they didn't exist for this company. A multi-billion-dollar company, $50 billion at one point. And they did not exist. Asset protection and recovery. The location and the security of the estate. Huge portions of this missing or stolen. Trying to figure that out. Working on transparency, he says. The pending comprehensive and deliberate investigation into claims against SBF are all taking place with regulators in the US and elsewhere. He says, I'm working on efficiency with other jurisdictions, and I'm trying to maximize the value for everybody who was totally screwed. Except as otherwise indicated, he says, these facts in this filing are based on my personal knowledge. I'm over 18 and I know what I'm talking about. He says, for the purpose of this case, I've identified 4 groups of businesses to which I refer as silos. So we've got these different, we like to use the word buckets on this show, but he's calling them silos. Okay, we'll indulge. He says the silos include a group of these debtors called the WRS. We've got FTX US, we've got Alameda, and others. Each of the silos, all 4 of them, was controlled by SBF. Different entities were owned with other partners, 2% equity in the different silos. The WRS silo also is split up. Ledger X owns and operates other portions of this. Okay, it's all spread out all over the place. Companies like BlockFi are implicated. John says, I have been provided with an unaudited, consolidated balance sheet for the silo on September 30th. Here is the latest available. This sheet shows $1.36 billion in total assets. However, because this asset sheet was produced while the debtors were controlled by SBF, I've got no confidence in that. This chart below summarizes some of the information that we have, right? $1.3 billion in assets right there. To my knowledge, this doesn't have any long-term funded debt. These are the balance sheets on other entities. He talks about Alameda. Now, Alameda was sort of the research arm, right? We have the FTX exchange, which you could get on there and buy, sell crypto. But then you had Alameda, which was sort of its hedge fund, right? They were doing their investments. They were doing all sorts of trading to sort of maximize gains. The parent company that operated in the Alameda silo is Alameda Research. They're organized in Delaware. Now, before this filing, Alameda operated trading funds, crypto assets. They had arbitrage, market making, all sorts of stuff. They were the crypto hedge fund with a diversified business trading in digital assets and related loans. Bankman controlled 90% of this entity. The balance sheet showed that they've got $13 billion in total assets, but he says, I've got no confidence in this at all. You see the numbers, $13 billion there. Other liabilities of $5 billion or $5 million there. But he says that he's got no confidence in any of this stuff. There's a venture silo, which is another giant entity. Total assets there. We talked some about venture. And then there's .com. 2.2 million there. Now, the events leading up to this, okay, so that's the summation. Those are all the moving pieces. He says, FTX had to file this document because they faced a severe liquidity crisis. On November 11, 2022, in the days leading up to that date, certain circumstances described below became known to a bunch of other people in FTX. A big group of executives began to start asking questions. They said, uh-oh, what's going on with Mr. Bankman-Fried? His leadership might be problematic. As the situation became increasingly dire, lawyers were engaged to talk about restructuring. On November 10th, the security commissions of the Bahamas, they took actions to freeze non-debtor FTX digital markets. Another person filed Chapter 7 or Chapter 15 bankruptcy petitions, and this moved forward. Now, at the same time, negotiations were being held between certain individuals at FTX and SBF concerning his resignation. SBF consulted with numerous lawyers, including these lawyers, and he also talked to his father, Paul Joseph Bankman. He works at Stanford Law. A document affecting relinquishment of control was prepared, and comments from SBF team were incorporated. On Friday, November 11th, after consultation with Bankman's lawyers, SBF ultimately agreed to resign. That's when I got appointed as the CEO. I was delegated all corporate powers, and I have the power to do all of this stuff. Other than these proceedings, I'm allowed to do this. Now, since SBF was booted out of there and this guy took over as CEO, many of the companies did not have appropriate corporate governance, and so I have created that, right? He's appointing different people. Rosenberg's a partner. He's got 25 years. He's going to come in and help. We've got Ventures silo, Rishi Jain. He's going to come in and help. .com silo, this former judge is going to come in. Matthew Dohe's, somebody else very smart, I'm sure. The directors, they're going to, run this thing like an actual company. They're going to have joint board meetings. They're going to have controls, asset protection, recovery, talking about business investments, and actually, organizing their spreadsheets. Now, the FTX group, they say, did not maintain any centralized control of its cash. Cash management procedures and the failures included the absence of an accurate list of bank accounts. They don't even know where their money is. And they also had insufficient attention to creditworthiness of banking partners around the world. So they're getting all of that situated. Each silo is going to have a cash pool. You can see what bankruptcy looks like, but why we don't spend any effort at our law firm doing any of this stuff. A lot of numbers. But this is the debtors. They've been in contact. They're building out some financial reporting systems. And he says, I have substantial concerns as to the information in these statements, especially with .com. He says, as a practical matter, I do not believe it appropriate for stakeholders or the court to rely on these audited financial statements. We haven't been able to locate anything with respect to Alameda or Ventures. It's all gone. No auditable financial statements at all. Now, when it comes to human resources, the FTX group's approach combined employees of various entities and outside contractors, and there were unclear lines of responsibility. Debtors have been unable to prepare a complete list of who worked for the FTX group. They didn't even know who their employees were on the petition date or the terms of their employment. Repeated attempts to locate certain presumed employees to confirm their status have been unsuccessful. I don't even really work here. Nevertheless, there is a core team of dedicated employees at the FTX who have stayed focused on their jobs during the crisis and with whom I've established appropriate lines of authority. There's still a bunch of people working there. FTX continues to review personnel issues, but I expect, based on my experience, that a large number of employees of the debtors will continue to work for them for the foreseeable future. That's going to establish accountability, preserve value, and maximize recovery. He says, as a CEO, I am thankful for the extraordinary efforts of this group of employees. Yeah, shout out to all of the good employees at FTX, right? And this guy's saying, shout out to them, who, despite difficult circumstances, right, many of them probably got obliterated. Gosh, can you imagine if, like, yeah, they're going to give you a bunch of this FTT token. You're a great employee. Here, take some more FTT. Oh, great. All gone. They're all still working there. Or not all of them, but, a portion of them. They've risen to the occasion. They've demonstrated their critical importance. Now, he says, we're preparing one or more motions to address issues related to this, and you're going to see much more filings out of me. He says that FTX did not have any disbursement controls that I believe are appropriate. He says, for example, the FTX group submitted payment requests through an online chat platform where a disparate group of supervisors approved disbursements by responding with personalized emojis. So somebody says in their Slack channel, they say, yo, SBF, can I spend $50 million? I got to go support Mark Kelly in Arizona. And they say, SBF says, what kind of emoji would he respond on that? Rocket ship? Because he's going to space? Rocket ship emoji. Boo! Mark Kelly gets $70 million. Yay, great. That's what they're doing. In the Bahamas, I understand that corporate funds of the FTX group were used to purchase homes and other personal items for employees and advisors. Can I go buy a house? Can I buy a Lambo? Thumbs up. Lambo. Yeah, thumbs up. Lambo. Race car. Pregnant man. Pregnant man with a baby. Who knows what they're doing in there? I understand that there does not appear to be documentation for these certain transactions and that their real estate was recorded in the personal name of these employees, not the names of the companies. The debtors are now figuring this out. He says, we're going to stop that from happening. When it comes to digital asset custody, the FTX group did not keep appropriate books and records or security controls with respect to its digital assets. SBF and Mr. Wang controlled access to digital assets of the main businesses in FTX, with the exception of the Ledger X stuff. Unacceptable management practices included the use of an unsecured group email account as the root user to access confidential private keys and critically sensitive data for the FTX group companies around the world. Oh my gosh. Oh, unbelievable. Their confidential private keys are stored in a publicly accessible group email. Oh my gosh. The absence of daily reconciliation of positions on the blockchain, the use of software to conceal the misuse of customer funds, the secret exemption of Alameda from certain aspects of FTX auto liquidation protocol, and the absence of independent governance as between Alameda, who own 90% by SBF and 10% by Wang, and the .com silo as well. The debtors have located and secured only a fraction of the digital assets. The debtors have secured in new cold wallets. So he says, we've got back about 740 million of cryptocurrencies that they believe is attributable to one of the silos. But we haven't been able to determine how much of this cryptocurrency is allocable by silo or other areas. The balances exclude cryptocurrency not under control of the debtors, at least 372 million. Whoa. $372 million of unauthorized transfers initiated on the petition date, during which time the debtors immediately began moving cryptocurrency into cold storage to mitigate the risk of the remaining cryptocurrency that was accessible at the time. So they are fighting over the cryptocurrencies, is what this paragraph says. Wow. Okay. So remember when all of this was happening, if you have money in FTX, or you had money in FTX, or you thought you had money in FTX, or you did, but now you don't, a lot of people were trying to log in and pull their money off of the exchange, right? To take this stuff so that, if it's on the exchange, it's their crypto. If you pull it off and you store your keys and you store your crypto in cold storage, it's your crypto. But here, right, the date that they were filing this bankruptcy petition, they're saying that 372 million starts getting offloaded out of the exchange, right? They've got their handle on 740 million in cold storage. They've got all of that, 740 million. But as soon as this hits the docket, 372 starts getting evaporated. So they start freaking out. They take the other half of the crypto and they start putting it into their, they start moving it around because somebody's taking it. The minting of approximately 300 million in FTT tokens by an unauthorized source after the petition date, and the failure of the co-founders to identify additional wallets. This is like shocking, man. Wow. So all sorts of really bad stuff was happening as they were filing this bankruptcy petition. All the rats were taking the money out of the ship. In response, FTX has engaged forensic analysts to identify the debtor assets on the blockchain. And all of this is in a public ledger, so they'll just be able to follow it around. Cybersecurity professionals have been brought in to identify the parties responsible for the unauthorized transactions on and after the petition date, right? Once you declare bankruptcy, you can't go like take all of your assets and start offloading them, right? Like you sell a bunch of widgets, you got a bunch of widgets in your inventory at your store. You say, I'm bankrupt. I can't fulfill any of my orders. I can't pay my employees, whatever. You don't get to keep all the widgets and then go sell those on your own. Like, oh, well, they're still mine. No, it's all part of the business, right? It's all being liquidated. So they say, help us fix this. And then they offload $400 million. They're going to begin the process of identifying what may be very substantial transfers of debtor property in the months leading up to the petition. The debtors team include businesses, accounting, forensics, technical, legal resources. He says that I believe are among the best in the world to track these activities. It's my expectation that debtors will require assistance from the court as this proceeds. Now, although this investigation has only begun and must run its course, it is my view that based on the information I've got to date, that many of the employees of the FTX group, including some of its senior executives, were not aware of the shortfalls or the potential commingling of the digital assets. Indeed, I believe some of the people most hurt by these events are current and former employees and executives whose personal investments and reputations have suffered. I can't even imagine. These are many of the same people whose work will be necessary to ensure the maximization of value for all stakeholders. So, you're working at this company. This company pays you in a fake asset. The fake asset was valuable. You thought, oh my gosh, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars saved up. It's all zero. Now you're being asked to stick around at the same company to fix the company, to maybe claw some of that back. Maybe. I have a lot of respect for the people in these positions who are working through this. It's like a bomb went off and they're fighting through it. Now, custody of other assets and investments. It says the FTX group had billions of dollars in investments other than cryptocurrency. However, the main companies of Alameda and Ventures did not keep complete books or records. And what we are doing now is building from the bottom up. We've got no top-down records, and so we're trying to locate the investments to assemble what we've got. Now, one of the most pervasive failures of XTX.com in particular is the absence of lasting records of decision-making. SBF often communicated by using applications that were set to auto-delete. After a certain period of time. And he encouraged employees to do the same. No records at all. No emails, no Slack messages, no search and find, no I did this or that. Amazing. The debtors now, he says, we're writing things down. The investigative effort is underway, led by myself and a team at a law firm that reports directly to me, including a former director of the SEC, a former director of the CFTC, a former chief of complex frauds and cybercrime units from the US DOJ. So this guy's got a bunch of ex-government, like prosecutors, investigators going after him. I regard ensuring the comprehensiveness, professionalism, and integrity of this investigation as an essential part of my job as CEO. He says transparencies with regulators around the world is a very important objective. And since Friday, the debtors FTX, we've been in contact with dozens of regulators throughout the United States and the world. It says that the FTX group included regulated and licensed subsidiaries, and we're going to try to engage with them. Says that FTX does have cryptocurrency, digital assets, and other critically sensitive data in repositories that have been the subject of unauthorized attempts at access. People are still trying to hack into these wallets. The debtors have implemented certain defensive measures. The debtors have been advised that attempts to access this property of the estate may create a risk of loss to unauthorized persons. FTX expects to seek relief from the court to authorize measures to access this information as safely as possible. The debtors are unable to create a list of their top 50 creditors that includes customers because without access to this data, and they might need the court's help to get this resolved. Finally, and critically, John J. III says the debtors have made clear to employees that the public that Mr. Bankman-Fried is not employed by FTX and does not speak for them. SBF, currently in the Bahamas, continues to make erratic and misleading public statements. SBF, whose communications and connections to financial holdings in the Bahamas remain unclear to me, recently stated to a reporter on Twitter, F regulators, they make everything worse, and suggested the next step for him was, quote, to win a jurisdictional battle versus Delaware. SBF may not say, I'm coming back at all. I'm just going to hang out here in the Bahamas. Come get me, United States. Shocking developments from John J. III, who is filing the bankruptcy petition on behalf of FTX. Here's a summary of the exhibits and the indicative assets. You can see 4 silos. If you zoom out on this, this is what it looks like. You've got, this is how he's going to go recover assets. Okay, so if you're out there, if you got totally screwed by FTX, as many people did, this is what his plan is. SBF, of course, the head honcho at the top. He's got a partnership that gives him 90% of the stake with Alameda. Gary Wang's got 10%. 67%, 2/3 with Gary Wang and somebody else over at ventures.com. Third-party investor, 75%, 52% with WRS. Amazing. All of these different entities. Look at this. FTX US, LedgerX, Vault Gaming, NFTs, BlockFi, Treasuries, Sequoia Capital, Anthropic, various investments, real estate, all sorts of stuff. Just absolutely amazing. Now, this is, wow, look at this. This is the organizational chart that this guy's team has drafted for us. FTX didn't have anything like this, obviously. But here's Sam Bankman-Fried, and these are all of the different entities that they were wrapped up in. So you can see, oh my gosh, just how deep this goes. And they were just printing money. I mean, this is printing money, sending it everywhere to all of these different subsidiaries. Look at all these things. Can you imagine all the spreadsheets that you'd have to get organized? It's like, man, no wonder this guy lost $10 billion. This is a lot of stuff. But all right, so that's it. That's everything that they're asking for. They're going to go get off, get all of this stuff. And, at some point, hundreds of millions of dollars was siphoned off to go to Democrats and journalists and Republicans too, and Mitch McConnell and all of it. All a gigantic scam. So, all right, so that's the bankruptcy filing. Now, we have more updates from the competitor of FTX and SBF. This is the CEO of Binance. He goes by the name of CZ, and he's explaining the call that he had with SBF when he called and said, can you buy my company? I am completely screwed.
Take us back, if you could, to when you first got the call from Sam and you first had a chance to look at the books, because I think a lot of people are still trying to understand exactly what happened here. How much of this was about commingling? How much of this was about terrible marking of the books? What did you see?
Yeah, I think I got a call from Sam 48 hours after I made the tweet, and then he wanted to talk. So at the beginning, I thought he would just wanted to, do a buyout on, do an OTC deal to buy out the FTT tokens we had. And then he wanted actually a buyout of the entire firm, of the entire FTX platform. And then, but then we got our team on, and it was pretty clear pretty soon that there's, there's misappropriation of user funds. The user funds are gone. At that point, it's clearly that he lied to his users, his investors, his VC investors, his employees. At that point, I thought I couldn't, whatever data that's in the data room, we couldn't trust anymore. So it was quite hard for us to do that due diligence. So we didn't go very far.
Obviously, I mean, look what that CEO who is facilitating the bankruptcy had to assemble. You take a look at their spreadsheets, you take a look at their emails. Well, there are no emails. Everything gets auto-deleted. So there is no records. And so Binance, they were going to come and help them. And they were going to say, look, we'll buy up some of your assets so you don't implode. But they saw it and they go, there's nothing we can do about this. You are in too deep of a pool. You cannot swim. We can't save you. This is the CEO of Binance who's saying, we never intended to take out SBF or FTX. We have no interest in doing that. There's no benefit to us to take out a competitor in this very, very new crypto market.
Sam tweeted, at some point I might have more to say about a particular sparring partner, so to speak, but you know, glass houses. So for now, all I say is, well played, you won. Can you respond to that?
I think only a psychopath can write that tweet.
Good call. Now, for those of you who have questions about crypto and sort of the adoption of crypto and where might this go in the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, listen to how he explains this and how sort of little the adoption is at this moment. This was pretty interesting to me.
I'll explain why. Number one is, he never told me I was his sparring partner. I'm actually not sure if that tweet is even tweeted at me or us. We're not
Who else
sure.
would it be?
We can imply, well, we can guess. But we never view other exchanges as sparring partners, competition. It's not a boxing match. We view this industry so young, so new. The industry is very far from saturated. We're probably at 1%. There's different ways to measure adoption. If we measure like how many people have some kind of crypto on the street, out of 100 people, probably 5 people will have some kind of crypto, depending on the country. But if we measure total asset invested in crypto, of that 5 people, probably on average less than 10%. So probably value-wise, there's probably less than 0.5% adoption in crypto.
Basically none.
So we haven't even reached 1%. We can grow the industry 100x.
Yeah.
And being a larger player in the industry, we will most likely grow with it. Or we can, within this 1%, we can try, we're dominant. We have a dominance in this 1%. But let's say we take market share away from another smaller player, we grow by our size 1%, which is 0.1% or 0.01% in the grand scheme of things. That's not interesting to us.
Yeah, so he's not thinking about taking out a competitor like that. He's thinking about exponential growth. The crypto market is just so fresh, right? It's so new that it really doesn't serve him to take out FTX and take out the entire, what really could set back the entire crypto industry massively. So, Binance and some of these other entities are now coming under the scrutiny of these regulators when they were working with somebody who we thought was regulated, right? That's why they were so close with Sam, because he was supposedly like the United States' version of the leader of a big crypto exchange. Like they were trying to prop this guy up, and he was funneling a bunch of money back over to them in the meantime. Now, the tape that a lot of people are concerned about is evidently floating out there. I haven't done any research into this, but this was posted on the interwebs, and they said that in less than 24 hours, I think this is a hostage video, but it says SBF and Caroline, who ran Alameda, they must be held accountable. Okay, this is posted all over the interwebs. Their tape is going to be released on an uncensorable webpage on November 18th. Here's what they say. As an FTX insider who wishes to remain anonymous, it is only right to bring the truth to light. Videos from the polycule, whatever that means, is going to bring transparency and humility to this space. They will not wipe this website. They can't. The puff piece from the New York Times has to be balanced out. Please bring awareness to this upcoming leak. Yikes. So, yeah, that doesn't sound too good. But so I haven't done any research into this, but apparently our friend the Quartering has. Of course, he is on YouTube. And here's what he posted for us on Twitter. He said, listen, now the Quartering, if you're not familiar with him, he's got a lot of experience. Okay. He's sort of a hardened internet wizard. And here's what he says. Look, I say this as a man who lived through the most uncensored era of the internet. The live leaks, the beheadings, the faces of death. I implore you, because I really do want what's best for you, do not look up the FTX sex tape. Do not. Period. So, there's your warning. Public service announcement courtesy of the Quartering. Do not. That's what he said. So, We'll take his advice on that one. Now, there are other people who are being asked some interesting questions about this. Hunter Biden was on a Twitter space, and we see this person here asked him a question about FTX and his involvement.
Yeah, Donald, going off of the FTX thing, the former CEO of FTX, Sam Bankman, was the second largest donor to Democrats this cycle. So, Hunter, I was wondering if, you had any insights to what was going on there.
I don't think we want to get into politics with this call. I think that a lot of business leaders in FTX, I think they give to both parties. They're trying to get influence. They're trying to pass bills. But
somebody posted this on Reddit. They said that they were in this Twitter space. And so I don't know how accurate this is or not, but it was pretty funny. You could see this, right? This is chairman. This is somebody who is the speaker. This is Hunter Biden. This is a Twitter space conversation. And Hunter Biden was on a Twitter space. And he was there talking about his artwork. And you can see he's even got this. Is this real? This isn't real. Is this real? I don't know if this is real or not. I can't tell if this is real or not. But it was posted on Reddit and somebody said it was real. I don't know if it's real or not, so take it for what it's worth. But it sounded real to me. It sounded like somebody asked him a question about it and then somebody else jumped in and took him off. Chat's saying it's real. Chat's saying it's not real. I don't know what it is. It feels real to me. Here's why. If we play it again, you see this question gets asked from this guy. Hunter Biden is down here as a speaker, and then he's sort of thrown off. This guy is thrown off the stage. Okay, so as he asks this pointed question, they pull him off the stage, which means he can't ask the question anymore. And the chat is saying it's real. I was there, Rob. Some people are saying that they were there. I was there. So I don't know what it is. Here it is one more time.
Yeah, Donald, going off of the FTX thing, the former CEO of FTX, Sam Bankman, was the second largest donor to Democrats this cycle. So, Hunter, I was wondering if, you had any insights to what was going on there.
He got pulled off. They threw him
I don't
off.
think we want to get into politics with this call. I think that a lot of business leaders in FTX, I think they give to both parties. They're trying to get influence. They're trying to pass bills. But
didn't want Hunter to have to answer that question, if that is a real thing. I don't know if it's real or not, but I thought it was pretty dang hilarious. Now, yesterday we talked about Mr. Wonderful. Mr. Wonderful, what's his name? Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, was named as a defendant in a lawsuit against FTX ambassadors, people who were promoting the brand. Of course, Kevin O'Leary was one of those individuals. And he is sitting down for an interview where he's facing some pretty hard questions about this. And I thought his answer was outstanding. Honestly, I thought he was very vulnerable. I thought that you could sort of see the pain in his face, the shock in his face. And a lot of people are feeling this. And it doesn't matter how wonderful you are, how much money you've got, right? All people get screwed sometimes. And so if you're out there and you're feeling bad about this, right, Mr. Wonderful also is in this situation, and he's accepting what I think is responsibility for it, and I think he is sharing in the pain. Let's listen.
Kevin, now that you've gone through this experience, will you think twice before being a spokesperson for other financial companies? Will it make you stop and ask new questions?
I'm a tireless supporter of entrepreneurship and innovation and disruption. I just am. It's why I live. It's why I get up in the morning and do what I do. I'm proud to support innovation. I can't get it right every time. I can't, and I make mistakes, but I'm proud of my track record. I'm totally transparent. I'm 100% honest. I immediately disclosed everything I know about this situation, as I should. I've taken lots of hits for it, but it's not going to stop me. I'm gonna go back and use the words of the great poet James Taylor. I've seen fire and I've seen rain, and I've seen cloudy days when I couldn't find a friend, but I'd always thought I'd have cash flow in the end.
You talk about trustworthiness and how important that is. Sam, days before this whole unwind, was tweeting out to the world that everything was fine. And even if fraud wasn't taking place here, everything was not fine.
The actual minute by minute of what happened there will be eventually disclosed. There is no way to hide it. It's a tragedy. It's a human tragedy. It's a financial tragedy. It's a financial collapse institutionally. But because of the nature of how these transactions are recorded on the chain, it will all be transparent eventually.
We're going to see it.
And Sam will have to account for that. And there'll be no choice for him. And what I say about these situations is always, I don't trade on rumor. I need fact. But and I don't have any, and you don't, no one does. And so we're speculating like crazy. Remarkably, I will say that this onion will be peeled a lot faster than other financial collapses due to the auditability and transparency of the blockchain. You're going to find this fascinating. You'll be covering this story for the next couple of years.
Whoa.
And the outcome is unknown.
Whoa.
But it is a remarkable human story. It really is. I mean, it's very difficult. And, I talked to my kids about it. I've talked to lots of people about it. I'm living it. I'm in the middle of it. But it doesn't change what I'm going to do when I get up tomorrow morning. I'm still going to have a portfolio in crypto. I'm still going to advance the investments I've made. I'm going to support entrepreneurs that want to disrupt financial services. It's not about blockchain or crypto. That's not what this is about. Those will go on. They will survive this. This will become, my speculation, in the next decade, the 12th sector, the S&P.
Still bullish on crypto, saying that the S&P will eventually incorporate this sort of financial instrument into their analysis and into their structure, but saying, man, I'm going to wake up, do the same thing that I've been always doing, maybe with a little bit more, I don't know, bigger microscope on 29-year-old cracked out entrepreneurs, maybe not. I don't know. That's Mr. Wonderful. And what I heard there was that there's going to be a lot more to this story. The layers of the onion will continue to be peeled. We're going to learn more. Now, he says that all this will be auditable because it's on the blockchain. Okay, I understand that. But once it comes off the blockchain, like once it comes out of the Bank of Ukraine, or once it comes out of the bank here in the United States and ends up in a Democratic politician's campaign fund, how do we claw that back? Are we going to be able to see that? Only time will tell. John J. III, who is leading the bankruptcy filing, sounds like he's going to do a heck of a job, and we will continue to cover it. So wherever it is you're watching this, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following along, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for our 3 segments on the program today. We covered some good ground today. The GOP springing into action, launching investigations into Hunter and Joe Biden, the Biden crime family. A lot there. We also had the Republicans signing on to the Respect for Marriage Act. That is very likely going to pass into law. So we'll have some new marriage rules on the books. Then finally, FTX and the unprecedented bankruptcy. Read through the bankruptcy filing, heard from Binance, saw some of the promises of prosecution or investment, talked a little bit about a really horrific tape and gave a PSA on that, and heard from Mr. Wonderful himself. But that is it for us on the day. And so now it's time to hear from you. We are going to do, we'll do some after. Let's see what I want to do here today. We're going to hear from you before we jump on over to our locals, comments, and questions. And I saw some super chats come in. And hey, Curtis Bartle is in the house. He says he became a member for 5 months. Thank you for being here for 5 months, Curtis. He says, just another good show, Rob. Thank you, Rob. Well, thank you, Curtis. And thanks for being here. Thanks for being lively in the chat. And thanks for being a member for 5 months. That's super awesome of you. All right. And so we had a couple super chats come in. First one from Geomancy Games. By the way, he's also on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to him. At Geomancy Games, also on Locals. Nothing will happen to him, and it makes me fearful, is what Geo said. Probably talking about FTX. Yeah. We'll see. He's down in the Bahamas. We'll have to see. MindTab says, thanks, Rob. That is a lot. Very interesting. It's my first time watching a whole show here. Here, that's MindTab in the house. Put that up on screen. Well, welcome, MindTab. We're grateful that you're here. Glad you enjoyed it. Chris says, Biden was always expendable to his party. They knew all his dirt and used it to control him. Now they have an excuse to replace him as POTUS while they let the GOP devour him. It was elder abuse. Yeah, so sort of like a sacrificial lamb, somebody that you can just pin all this garbage right onto. And, he's probably not even aware of it. So no harm, no foul. It is pretty shocking. Yeah, we were saying elder abuse like 2 years ago. Remember that? Like during the debates and stuff? We're like, what is happening here? And it's 2 years and he's still, he can barely walk around. People don't even get near him. It's a weird deal. Yeah, I guess they can, it's like, it's a sacrificial lamb. You fatten them up, you sacrifice them, and you're good. His story says, what is the chance of the demon rats getting arrested for money laundering? 0% chance. Yeah. They're probably not even going to give any money back, right? Or maybe the Republicans will give some money back, but not the Democrats. That's just how things work these days. So those were some great super chats. Thank you for sending those in, my friends. And we're doing one final refresh before we wrap it up on the day. We are actually going to do, let's see what else we have here. We're going to go back to Locals and do an after party. We did a little bit of a different setup. So we're going to go back to Locals. We're going to do an after party on Locals. I'm going to start I'm going to refresh I'm going to start a live chat on Locals and we'll hit our after party comments. Alan Harkin was here over from Rumble. Shout out to Alan Harkin, and thank you, V, for the message on that. The Antikiss said that Alan sent this one in from Rumble. He says, Robert, you educate me on issues that normally confuse me, and there are so many. Thank you for all that you do. Well, thanks, Alan. It's very nice of you to say that. And honestly, you guys educate me too. You guys are, constantly giving me the feedback on the things that we talk about, and I learn a ton, right? Whether you can see it or not, I'm sort of watching the chat, the comments, the posts, the super chats. Thanks, Alan. I'm grateful that you're here. And thanks for being over on Rumble and for supporting us. Look at all these amazing people on Rumble you see here. Anything, Army Brat. We've got Eric Scorpio, Cat Crap Fever, Fluffy 56, Lil Galaxy 56. The whole crew's over there. And so shout out to our friends on Rumble and our friends on YouTube. But I think that is it for us on the day. We had another super chat come in, a tip come in from our Locals community. This one says, Rob, have you ever thought about what would happen to the political industry if antitrust laws were applied to it? I presume that's why they avoid referring to it as an industry, but it is. Billions of dollars. Yeah, I mean, yeah, what if you were to say like the Democrats and the Republicans are like monopolies, and they should be broken up into separate parties, or like they're really not two entities, they're just like one entity. Yeah, they certainly wouldn't want that to happen. They love that uniparty. They don't want anybody breaking it up. So I think it's a good point. But I think that is it for us, my friends. We are going to leave it right there. We're going to come back over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community and wrap up with some an after party with a little extra comments and questions over there. So head on over there if you want to join us. Otherwise, thank you once again to our sponsors, of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, 480-787-0394. Our mission is to help good people charged with crimes in the state of Arizona get through their cases, find some safety, clarity, and hope, not only in that particular situation, but also beyond that in their lives. We help with everything. Anything that is criminal. Anytime you see sirens or police officers, that's what we help with. Things like criminal damage, urinating in public, all of the old town crimes, right? disorderly conduct, trespass, all of those. We also do criminal traffic offenses, reckless driving, suspended licenses, criminal speeding. We've got that in Arizona. Domestic violence crimes, drug crimes, major felonies, some of the more gruesome stuff as well. We can help because oftentimes people don't understand that some effort in a defense will dramatically change the outcome. And we love to help people get through bad situations. 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. We appreciate you keeping your antennas poised for our team. We also have 4patriots.com. Use promo code Robert to get your survival food so you don't starve to death. And also Goldco. I mean, if you're sick of crypto, gold is a good alternative. RobertLikesGold.com is the website to attend to. Otherwise, my friends, I want to say thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. Law and order, just like we like it here. Vientikis, Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause. Shout out to Lean. I see playing hooky over there as well. Just Cause. We've got Zulu, Geomancy, who came by. You can sub to his channel along with our friend Henry. But other than that, my friends, we are done here for the day. We will be back tomorrow. Same time, I believe. We were a little late today. Had a busy day. But we'll be back same time tomorrow to do it all again. We are heading over to locals right now. Come and join us if you'd like to stick around. Otherwise, I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.